will you tell the American people to whom you lent $2.2 trillion of their dollars? Will you tell us who got that money and what the terms are of those agreements?
We explain each of our programs. In terms of the terms, we explain the terms exactly. We explain what the collateral requirements are. We explain what.
To whom did you explain that?
It's on our website.
Yeah. Okay.
So all that information is available in our commercial paper program.
And who got the money?
Hundreds and hundreds of banks. Any bank or that has access to the U.S. Federal Reserve's discount.
Can you tell us who they are?
No.
That's Vermont self-avowed socialist Senator Bernie Sanders, March 2nd, 2009, asking Fed Chair Ben Bernanke, will you tell the American people where $2.2 trillion of their money went? His response, no. Now here we are, watching Tim Geithner promising more of our money to the IMF, Ben Bernanke in collusion with the Treasury, throwing money around like the Pied Piper of paper. And you wonder now why more and more of the Republican presidential contenders are getting in line with Ron Paul's call to audit the Fed. And not just Republican presidential contenders, but also Republicans in the House and the Senate, and Democrats, too, that are starting to wonder, what did they do with all that money? Dr. Rand Paul, Republican senator from Kentucky, author of The Tea Party Goes to Washington, is with us on the phone. Dr. Paul, welcome.
Good to be with you, Jerry.
When you hear that, and I know you heard that in 2009, I know your dad heard that in 2009, but who didn't hear it in 2009 that should have?
Well, the amazing thing to me is that not only is all that money being funneled through different entities, with the bank bailouts and going to foreign banks, one of the surprising things we found out was that actually Gaddafi's central bank got bank bailout money from the U.S. taxpayer. So it's not only a host of foreign banks, but it's private individuals. There are private individuals in the United States who are getting rich off of this. And really, I guess what the real insult is that many of these big corporations and banking institutions went bankrupt, but the people working there never missed a beat. They made $100 million in bonuses as their companies were being driven into the ground, and immediately they made money the next year. I mean, we gave benefits and we gave successful treatment to people who are running their companies into the ground.
I was just sharing with the audience the CBO report that came out that they said they expect our economy to remain below its potential for another 6 years, unemployment to remain above 7% for another 3 years, taxes are going to go up 30% over the next 2 years, and in dollar terms, anticipated income and federal tax revenue in a 3-year period is going to go up 44%. Now, I guess, Senator, people would say, well, if that worked, if all of that worked and we were seeing unemployment come down, if we were seeing the number of people employed, fully employed going up, if we saw the people living below the poverty level decreasing, if we saw the number of people on food stamps decreasing, if we saw that we got a return on our investment, some people might say, well, okay, maybe there was some people who got preferential treatment or special treatment, but it seems the end result is nowhere close to what people would have anticipated that amount of money would have done to help turn this financial ship of state around.
Well, if the CBO is predicting 6 more years of plague and famine, they must be planning on another term for President Obama, I guess.
Is that, is that really what we've gotten down to, where this is just going to be an ability for the government to basically promise goods and services, bread and circuses to people for a long enough period of time to get somebody reelected?
Well, you would hope not. You would hope we would try to fix some of the problems. I mean, I think we have a real problem that's headed our way. It's the debt crisis in Europe. I see it as a contagion, and I think it's headed towards America. We have the unenviable position now being one of only 6 countries whose total debt equals their economy. And that's not something you should wish for. And our number one export as a country right now is our debt. But there will come a day of reckoning, and that may be sooner than we all think. And that's why we really need to get someone in charge of the country who knows a little bit about business and knows a little bit about trying to cure our addiction to spending.
One of the things I saw that the Federal Reserve was doing behind the scenes quietly is that they were stress testing our banks yet again. This is one of the things that your dad calls for with an audit of the Fed, to follow the money and get a pretty good understanding of where it's going, where it's been going, who has it, what they're doing with it, what they did with it, and are we ever going to see it back. But in the second round of stress tests, the Federal Reserve said to the banks, why don't you just kind of take a look at your books and tell us how you'd look with 13.5% unemployment, an 8% drop in GDP, and a 52% plunge in the stock market. Now, with all of the trillions of dollars, Senator, that have been thrown at the problem, why would the Federal Reserve at this point be doing that to an even greater degree than they did it before when they were stress testing?
It makes no sense, and really it's why we need more oversight, we need more transparency at the Fed. But we've been going the opposite way. You know, with Dodd-Frank, we created a whole new agency that is only overseen by the Fed. The Consumer Financial Protection Agency doesn't even get funded by Congress or by your tax dollars. It gets funded by printing the money up. But ultimately, I think what we need to explain to people, and people particularly in Nevada or wherever they're listening to you, is that working class folks, people on fixed income, they are the people who are precisely hurt the worst when you run up a massive debt, because the way they pay for the debt, the Federal Reserve prints the money and your prices rise. So your gas prices have doubled, your food prices are rising dramatically, and that's all because we run up a massive debt. So when the Democrats promise you, you know, that they're going to be Santa Claus and give you all this free stuff, realize there is no such thing as a free lunch. It comes with a price. The price is the debt and the destruction of the dollar and rising prices.
I know you're trying to help your dad with his presidential campaign, so I'm going to help you help him. When you come to Nevada, don't say Nevada, because this boy from Brooklyn, when he came to Nevada, was hammered by the Nevadans. It's Nevada. So I just want you to know that that's going to be one of those things.
I think the last time I was on your show, I got it wrong, too. I'm going to have someone write me some notes with some phonetics so I can get Nevada right.
Nevada. It all wants to add up. Nevada. It wants to add up for your dad. Now, Congressman Ron Paul, presidential contender, is coming out to campaign in Nevada, not anticipating that he's going to beat Mitt Romney in Florida. A lot of people are starting to say, well, people like your dad or Rick Santorum, they should just drop out and make this a two-man race. I've heard what Rick Santorum has said about that, and he's going to be on with us a little bit later in the program. But does that stuff even resonate with your dad? Is it just idle chatter?
Mostly idle chatter. But what I would say, if we're talking about who should drop out, when you poll all of the candidates against President Obama, Romney beats Obama and Ron Paul ties Obama. Nobody else comes close. Gingrich isn't even close to Obama. Gingrich's approval rating, if you're looking about electability, 20% of the people like Gingrich and like 60% don't like. No one has ever overcome such high negatives. So I don't think electability really is working in Gingrich's favor. But the other thing is if you poll Ron Paul against President Obama, you find that he beats President Obama among independents by 7 points. So really, there's a lot from the polling data that actually shows that Ron Paul, who has a 50-state strategy, is on the ballot in all 50 states, has a national campaign network and a following, and has a large independent following, actually does pretty well in the polls against President Obama, better than anybody but Romney.
Senator Rand Paul is with us, Republican senator from Kentucky, RonPaul2012.com, his dad's presidential website. He's the author of The Tea Party Goes to Washington. Senator, explain the youth vote and the youth movement behind the elder statesman, as Wolf Blitzer woefully attempted to point out the other night in the debate where your dad kind of put him in his place in a very forceful and funny way.
Yeah. Well, I think the young people have a little bit of Republican in them, and they have a little bit of Democrat in them, and they combine the best of both of those to be sort of independent. And, you know, my dad does very well with independents, and he attracts some people also from the Democrat Party, as well as a lot of old-fashioned, fiscally conservative Republicans. Some use the word libertarian. Some people, young people, tend to go for that label more. I think particularly in Nevada that there's a lot of libertarian streak. There's a lot of people out your way who I think are part of the Leave Me Alone coalition. They just soon the nanny state and the big federal government not tell you guys what to do, and that you You moved out west because you wanted to get away from the federal government. So I think there is some sympathy for that view. The other thing about young people is I think they're cynical. They don't really believe much of what they see on TV anymore. They think that fiction, the soap operas, and the newscasts, there's not a lot of difference. So they tend to get their news off the internet. They tend to make up their own mind. They maybe listen to talk radio, but they aren't really getting it from ABC, NBC, and CBS anymore. And I think because of that, when they get someone like my dad who isn't politically correct, but is kind of a truth teller and doesn't always try to say the right thing, he just says what he thinks the situation calls for, as opposed to pandering for your vote, I think young people sense a genuineness there, and I think that's what attracts them.
And one thing that attracted me to your dad's campaign and my endorsement of him for president back in early December is that, in my interpretation, Senator, he trusts me. And that's so refreshing to basically, we hear the song, Jesus, take the wheel. And he said, no, you take the wheel. Let me drive the car. I'll take care of it. And, you look at this consistent socialist, Obama. Well, how do you beat a consistent socialist? You beat him with a consistent conservative, a consistent constitutionalist. And your dad has been consistent in many areas over the years. But the one thing that appeals to me the most is that he's saying, you do it. You can be in control of your own life. And I trust you to be stewards of your own finances and your own retirement and your own future and your own lives. And where so many people in government are trying to tell us how to live our lives and what to do with our lives and what we can eat during our lives, your dad's a guy that just said, go ahead. I trust you to do what's right by you and ultimately by everyone else.
Well, and I think it's sort of the truth behind a lot of what big government is that big government and those who promote it think they know better for you what you can do with your life than you do, and so they do treat you as sort of too stupid to take care of yourself. And Ron Paul's message is that you may not always make wise decisions, but it's none of his business to be making the decisions for you. And that's part of the libertarian creed, is to leave people alone as long as you're not harming your neighbor, as long as you're not stealing or creating violence on someone else, to largely leave you alone to your own pursuits.
Where do we go with the Ron Paul movement, the revolution, the momentum that he's built up? A lot of people say Dr. Ron Paul is grooming Dr. Rand Paul for 2016. So I'm not asking you to declare anything, along those lines. But how does the movement continue on after the Republicans pick their nominee? Hopefully, in my case, they pick Dr. Paul. But if they don't, where does the movement go from there?
Well, if he's grooming me, he hasn't told me yet. So if you see him, ask him when he's going to tell me this. No, I think that the movement is a big movement. He's created a whole wing of the Republican Party who is comprised of fiscally conservative folks, but also folks who want a constitutional foreign policy. And I think they're part of this Leave Me Alone coalition. But I think that really it's here to stay. He's gotten a lot of people to join the Republican Party. A lot of people who used to be in a third party came on board because of him. And I think if they'll remain in the Republican Party, show up at their precinct meetings, become county chairmen. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've met who joined the party in 2008 and now are county chairmen. So you really can have an influence. I tell people, if you want to have influence, all you got to do is show up. If you show up at a Republican meeting, within a couple meetings, they'll ask you to be an officer because nobody else shows up. So you can have an influence, and I think that his message, some of the other candidates are picking it up. On Libya, I think several of the Republicans on the stage were saying that, the president was wrong to go to war without an authorization from Congress or a declaration of war. And so I think that more and more people are picking up on it. The mood of the country definitely has. I think almost half of Republicans think it's time to come home from Afghanistan, and probably close to 70% of the American public thinks it's time to come home.
All good stuff. I got to take a break. Senator Rand Paul, Republican senator from Kentucky, author of The Tea Party Goes to Washington, talking on behalf of his dad's campaign, Dr. Ron Paul. The website is ronpaul2012.com. Look forward to seeing you out here in Nevada. Thanks, Senator. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jerry.
Nevada. Thank you very much. Take care. It's you got to get it right with the Nevada. It has to add up, or else they're going to say. I like everything the senator says, except he doesn't know how to pronounce the damn name of the state. Disqualifies it right off the bat there. 800-876-4123 is the number. Stick with me.
Jerry Doyle.